So officially welcome to our what do you call it? Unofficial show on website. This is our fifth session of in conversation with. It's basically because we are all working from home or staying at home. So we just wanted it to be a little productive as to how we can get connected with each other at the same time, get inspired and work. So we're really honored and happy to have you all the way from Bangladesh. So welcome officially.
Thank you so much for having me. It's actually my pleasure to be here, and it's always nice to share your own experiences and your own thoughts. So it's absolutely my pleasure.
All right. So for people who know you or for people who doesn't know your work yet, would you mind explaining a little bit about yourself?
Yeah, sure. Well, I'm Ashraful Arefin, and I've been a photographer for about 5 years. I started my photography journey in 2013, and I started by doing a 365 photography project. And like at first it was more like a hobby, and then kind of I realized that this is the one thing that make me most happy. So I just wanted to follow this path, and I was actually a student of graphic design and drawing and painting. So kind of shifted my path towards photography, and yeah, that's how like now I'm doing it full time, and that's my story basically.
All right. So let me try and see if I can play you that amazing video that you just released a few days ago by your friend. Let's see if that plays well. If not, we'll figure out some way. So just hang on for a minute and I'll play that video.
When walking through the alleyways of Old Dhaka, there's a story in every corner and direction you turn. My name is Ashraful Arefin, and I'm a fine art and street photographer based in Bangladesh. I've been born and raised in the city of Dhaka, probably the most densely populated city in the world. But ironically, growing up, I have always been shy and afraid of being amid the crowd and chaos. So I wanted to challenge myself to face my fears and took a few solo trips across Nepal and India. When I came back, I rediscovered my own city with a fresh new perspective, and thus grew my love for narrow lanes and alleyways. Walking through these alleys and seeing the daily lives of these people, it's like reading a storybook. Each street has its own vibe and character. Every time I come here, I find something new to capture. It's like making up for my lost times while growing up. These streets are full of emotions, stories, and an unique essence of local lifestyle. The thing I love most about these streets are those split moments which I know I can't recreate again. Photography for me is about telling a story. I try to convey an emotion, a feeling, rather than an experience. So when I am taking an image, I like to think how they are feeling, what they are thinking. I want people to sink into my subject, their happiness, sadness, struggles, or just a simple smile. For me, it's about capturing those moments most people would simply walk past. is everywhere. All we need is to look with a different perspective and an open heart. With all the hate that surrounds us these days, all I hope with my work is to make people appreciate their surroundings, their moments of everyday life, and rediscover the beauty within.
All right. Can you hear me, guys? Did you get to watch the video properly, or? Can you hear me, Ashraful?
Yes, I can hear you.
All right. I hope the video played a little laggingly, but I think it did give people some idea about what you were doing. We'll be sharing all the links to your work and also this video later once we are done with the talk. So let us start with your travel to Nepal, the solo travel that you did to Nepal and India. Why don't you tell us a little bit about your trip?
Well, my first trip to Nepal was in 2016, and like the first one was mostly, I was more like a tourist, and I was there for like 1 week, and that time didn't get to explore that much. It was just like
I think you're breaking up.
seeing those tourist areas, not more like a photo. I think my Wi-Fi is a bit slow. Is it okay now?
Okay. Yeah, it is okay.
Okay. Okay, so yeah, so the first time in 2016 it was a bit more like a tourist, and second time when I got back there in 2017, it was more like I kind of started to explore more the streets, and like I remember I was like I used to roam around the off the beaten paths and all the streets, especially in Bhaktapur. So yeah, the second time it was a bit more like a photographer and trying to see it from a local's perspective and things. So yeah, it has been really like I would say in 2017 it was even more exciting, and I kind of got to explore the more of my photographer side, and that love for those narrow streets was growing up. So yeah.
All right. So do you have any photos that you can share right now, right on your laptop, or you'll have to find it?
From Nepal?
Yeah, from Nepal, from the recent trip.
Okay, sure. Okay, so one of the photos was can you see my screen?
Yeah.
Okay. So one of my favorite photo from Nepal was this one. You see it?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So this was shot in Bhaktapur, and I just loved the whole vibe and the kind of calmness and atmosphere of this image. This was one of my favorite one shot in Bhaktapur, and another one was also the Cinemagraphs I did that time. Like that was the first time I started doing street cinemagraphs. One of that was this. It was shot in Tamil.
Right.
And yeah, like there are some few photos which I didn't take a lot of photos. Like I was there for like I think 2 weeks. So, but like I would say that those are the kind of first of kind of photos that I personally got to understand my own style and the kind of photos I mostly like to shoot.
Mhm.
So yeah.
Okay, so like photographically, do you say Nepal has changed you a bit, or did it help you get into photography?
Definitely, like my love for street photography has definitely started from there. And I remember when I was there for the first time in
Mhm.
2016. So I just wanted to try everything that time. I took like architectural shots and landscapes and streets and people. So when I got back, I felt like it was the photographs with people which made me even more interested, and I personally loved them most.
Mhm.
So that's why I kind of after that I went back. I traveled to India
Mhm.
and in Varanasi, and from there I was actually going there to photograph the scenes of ghats and stuffs. But when I got back, I felt like it was those narrow streets and people which attracted me more. This is where, when I got back to Nepal second time, in the streets of Patan, Bhaktapur, those narrow alleys and old structure, like old streets with people, I finally understood. Okay, like this is the one thing in the street I really love most. So let's explore this more and let's try to see what I can create more from it. And also the idea of street cinemagraphs came into my mind from those streets. Like, okay, let's try something that I know and something I've been doing in my home. Let's see if I can do something similar to the streets and from my travel photography, and that kind of took off.
Okay, so did you first come to Nepal and then to India, or you've been to India
Yes,
before?
it was Nepal first time. I
Okay,
went to Nepal first time, then I was in India.
right. Because I was looking at your Varanasi photo, and they're really surreal, and it looks very cinematic, right? So how was that trip for you? How was the India trip?
Uh, Varanasi trip was definitely like a life-changing experience, I would say, because you know when I was in first time I was in Nepal, I remember I went to the Pashupatinath temple, and there like the whole experience was very new to me, and there I saw someone like the cremation process keeps going on. So for the first time I actually saw something, but in Pashupatinath you don't see that that in a large scale where in Varanasi in comparison to Varanasi. So the first time when I saw it, I was a bit shocked. Like it was very new to me. I was a bit scared and confused. Like I just didn't know how to react or something. So when I was in Varanasi, like they have in that city, like they literally live with death.
Mhm.
So when you see death, like from a very personal perspective and experience, so that kind of change a lot in you. So that really changed my perspective about life and how I see my surroundings and things. So yeah, that was really I would say a very wonderful experience. And also the streets in Varanasi is kind of people from different cultures and countries there. So yeah, it was very eye-opening, and also I got many ideas about photography, and I met some really amazing photographers there. And actually, the streets of Varanasi really, made me realize that okay, like I really have a thing for these narrow alleys and things. So when I got back, in my own city, I kind of tried to remember those memories and tried to find those things in my city and my streets. So yeah, it was really like as a photographer and as a human being, it was really like a very great experience for me.
Mhm. So talking about your street photography and the alleys, when you are back home in Dhaka, your Dhaka photos are also really interesting. The street, the alleys within Dhaka, and then the ruins, and the color itself is really vivid. How do you find those kind of lights? You because you have a very signature style of lighting. Do you actually wait for the light, or how do you like? What's the whole process?
Um, well, it kind of a bit of both. Like sometimes it happens that I just randomly, roam around and try to see what I can find. And but most of the time what I do is I location scout a lot. Like whenever sometimes it happens that I'm on the street just to, finding spot and just to see how light works in different streets. So when I'm on the streets, I try to see that where I can find something interesting, some maybe an alley with an interesting light. So when I find something like that, I take a note. I maybe like pin my location in Google Map, and then I kind of plan out, okay, like this today, this hour, there will be some good golden light falling in that street. So let's just go back there and wait for someone to, come by that particular spot or lighting spot, and then I try to take a photo of them. So right now, like most of the time, my approach to the street is this, because what happens in Dhaka that the streets are so congested with buildings and things, like you get good lighting condition for like maybe 10 to 15 minutes. And also like from my place to go to Old Dhaka, it takes around like 1 hour. So you need, for me, I really need to plan out that, okay, this time and at this particular time I have to be there, otherwise I'll miss the shot or miss the light. So yeah, right now it's mostly about that. But sometimes it happens that, I'm randomly just roaming around and suddenly I see a good light and a good subject, and then I take the photo.
And with my experience, I know Dhaka is pretty chaotic and crowded, but most of your photos and cinemagraphs are really very calm and very, it doesn't look crowded as much. So how do you plan your shoot? Do you actually prepare a lot beforehand, or do you just go there on the spot and take photos?
First of all, I use a longer focal length. Lens has to play a lot too, because like when you're using a long focal length and a large aperture, it kind of make that beautiful separation of your subject with the background. So already you get rid of some of the crowds. And another thing is that I try to look for those streets and places where there are less crowd, and I can for example, the back alleys there, and like the alleyways from different than the main road. So people are more chilled out, and you can find less people from the main street. So yeah, I look for those streets and try to see that, wait for the moment that where there will be less people in the frame, and finding someone who is actually not doing too many things. So yeah, it kind of like a bit of planning, a bit of luck, and a bit of experience also.
And are you, like your history, education-wise, did you do any photographic related courses, or did you just buy a camera and then out of hobby it started out?
Well, as I was already a student of, graphic design and drawing and painting, so I kind of had the knowledge about composition and how colors work, how you work with your subject and stuff. So that technical side was always there, but as a photographer, I didn't take anything, any course related to photography. I just I got my first camera to kind of document my artworks and take high resolution photos of them. But eventually, I started taking photos of friends and families, and then I kind of felt like, okay, this is the one thing I'm really enjoying. So then, when I was doing the 365 project, I started shooting still life images, and that time I really kind of got hooked into it, and I felt like, okay, I need to learn a bit more. I need to learn how the lighting works and stuff. And then I started to watching the online tutorials, then YouTube tutorials. Also, I used to watch Creative Live classes a lot. So yeah, from online classes, I learned so much. And yeah, I would say that mostly it was my pushing myself to learn more from different online sources. But as in a photography school, no, I didn't have that traditional courses or anything. Mostly from online courses. And classes.
And is that how you got introduced to Cinemagraph? For people who don't know about cinematography, can you explain what Cinemagraph is and how you got into it?
Basically, a cinematograph is like another name for living photos. Like it should look like a photograph, but there should be some sort of small element of movement, repeated movement there. So it's kind of similar to the paintings of Harry Potter, the living paintings of Harry Potter. And actually, it got like the photographers who first created this, they kind of got that idea from that Harry Potter movies. So I saw some examples on Behance, and one of my friend, he's a fashion photographer, and his name is Sherif Mokbel. And from his Behance project, I saw some fashion photography cinemagraphs, and that was the very first time I got introduced to them. I was very like literally surprised that what is this media, like this is not exactly a video, or it's not a still photograph. So I got very curious and I tried to see what's the name of it. And that time not a lot of people knew it. So I was like trying to see what I can come up with and things. I was trying to figure out the process. And luckily that time I saw a tutorial on Flearn on YouTube. And they did one tutorial about how to create a cinematograph from Photoshop. And I was also learning Photoshop that time. So I saw watched their tutorial and tried something, from like usual stuffs and still life things. I think it was my first cinematograph was some sort of, was a teacup and moving tea, something like that. So from there, I learned the process and started doing it with my still life subjects. And later, as I told you, when I was in Nepal the second time, I felt like, okay, let's see if I can create something, a cinematograph from street. So that thought came out, and finally I tried to explore more. And then when I went back to India second time, that time I had a plan to create a cinematograph series about Rajasthan. And that also like, I did one series there. And when I got back and in Dhaka, I felt like, okay, let's try one for, Dhaka shipyard. That was most recently done. So yeah, from like right now, I mostly do like with still life cinemagraphs and street cinemagraphs. And also, I remember like when I was in Nepal in second time, I did one workshop with Sattya about cinemagraphs when I was in Nepal. So, yeah.
Mm-hmm. So when you do a cinematograph, it's very, the ones that you've done is very detailed, very fairy tale kind of a cinematograph that you've recently produced, like Harry Potter styled or very dreamy. How do you think of those ideas? Where do those ideas come from?
Well, mostly from fairy tale movies, then stories, Harry Potter, all those elements in Harry Potter. I just kind of get those ideas and try, what can I do this with my lifestyle, my usual, surroundings, and the kind of objects, the kind of elements I have available in my home. So yeah, from that, mostly from Harry Potter movies and those like surreal paintings. And another great source of inspiration for me is illustrations. I follow a lot of illustrations from different artists in the world, and try to see that, especially the magical illustration, while something like levitation happening or some sort of magic is happening. So from those kind of sources, I get the inspirations.
Mm-hmm. Like the one from Nepal, I think that was featured in Flixel blog as well as one of the best cinemagraphs, right? Do you have any cinemagraphs that you'd like to show from your screen and just tell us how you did that? How was that possible?
Sure. Okay. Should I do the still life one or the travel one?
Anything that you feel like sharing.
Okay. I think I'll go with one still life here. Okay, so I think I'll go with this one. So this was like, I wanted to do something like this for a very long time. And first, one of the reason was that, you know, I'm a big fan of, can you see it?
Yeah, I can see it. I think other people can also see it.
So yeah, one of my reason was that like I'm a big fan of Harry Potter, and I wanted to do something with owls and things, and I always wished that I had a pet owl, something like that. So yeah, the idea was to create something like, you know, a table of maybe a table from Hogwarts, like maybe someone is there, a wizard is just was there, and he or she just went out, and this is his or her workspace, something like that. It was the idea. So the first idea was to create this levitating hill, levitating pen, and second one was the owl, and just to add a little bit of motion and more realism to it, I just added one more motion for the lamp over here. So this was actually like, I also have a behind the scene process for this. This was like I attached it to a stick and just moved it around, and later in After Effects I removed the stick over there, and I also took a blank background from just the background with all those elements, and later I combined them and composited them in After Effects. And for the owl, I got one stock footage from Shutterstock with a white background. And later you just, in After Effects, you get rid of the white background. And I used the roto brush. By rotoscoping, I got rid of that white background, and also added some little details like the colors, feather details, and also this, I don't know if you can see it, the catch light in the owl side. This was also added in post. Mm-hmm. And another one was this motion. It was more easily because it was done on the spot. I just moved it around, and later in Photoshop, I masked out the movement. And later in After Effects, I combined them all together and did a color processing. And finally, like, it was there.
So how long did it take you to do this?
I guess like, to shoot, it didn't take much time, but to gather everything and create the composition and set, it took around like 1 day, I would say, like 1 or 2 days just to complete everything, the scene. Mm-hmm. And to shoot, it took about like, I just needed to get the footage of this pen and this lamp, so it took about like 30 seconds of footage. And yeah, and in the post, like to create the actual cinemagraphs, it took about 2 days for me. Mm-hmm. Because of this, to rotoscope this owl and place it in this stand, and like cut out all the feathers and things. So it kind of like, when you are doing rotoscoping in After Effects, it actually takes a lot of time, because you have to go through every single frame and cut out from the background and see if you have missed any frames and something. So yeah, it took about, I'd say, a whole day just to rotoscope and make sure that this looks realistic in After Effects. Also to rotoscope this one. And another day just to assemble everything and create the color palette and stuff. So in total, it took about, I'd say, from shooting to post-processing, 3 days. But the planning and getting the props and all the thing took me a longer time. So yeah, the preparation was for like at least 2 weeks. So yeah, that was in general the time frame.
So this is everything is under your control. You know what movement you want to do. But for your street cinemagraphs, how do you plan? And if you can also show us an example of street cinemagraphs, and then tell us how did you made it happen? Did it later on, or did you plan this to be a cinematograph first and then shot, or how do you do it?
Yeah, so let's go to there. So this one was shot in Jaisalmer in India. So when I'm on the street, because in the street you can't really plan out that, okay, I'm going to shoot this or that, because you don't know what you'll get or what kind of movements there will be. So my approach was that I was looking for some sort of motion that was going on a loop, that I can create a loop. For example, like this man here, he was working like his, if you can see here, like this is happening in a loop. I can easily create a cinematograph out of it. So I look for this kind of motions and movements. Another one is like, for example, another one was here. This one, like the dog is moving in a pattern. Like it's the movement, you can create a loop from one point to another. Like it's repetitive. So I look for these movements and motions, and when I find it, I just stand there and take my footage. And then what I do is I wait for, since it's on the street, there will be people moving around and overlapping your screen. So I just wait there and wait for people to move away and take some blank shots. For example, like this one, I took a blank frame of this. There are people coming down this road, and I just waited and took a blank shot like this with only this guy. And later with this footage, I composited everything in Photoshop and made this clear frame. The same thing here also in this one. Like you can see this motion is happening in a very repetitive pattern. And I got this woman, and there were people going through this street, and I waited and waited for people to move away and got this clear street. And later in Photoshop I combined everything. So that's how it happens in the streets.
Right. So just to break on this, if you have any questions, the viewers, you can let us know through Zoom or through Facebook, and we'll try and get Ashraful answer those. In the meantime, so during this lockdown, how are you staying creative, or you're taking break from creativity and just lying around? What's your lockdown days like?
Well, I'm trying to create a lot from home, and there are some plans I really looking forward to, and some projects I have been planning to do in this lockdown period. And honestly, for me, I've been still a photographer for the first 2 years of my career. So I'm used to being in home and in my own studio and doing stuff. So I'd say it's not too different for me. I have always used to this kind of, staying at home, creating from home. So yeah, but right now what I'm doing is I'm planning out and preparing for the projects for still life cinemagraphs and still life works. And also I'm going through since I can't go to the streets, I'm going through my archives and through old projects and old travel photos, and trying to see that if there are any photos left to edit or something. And I'm actually finding now what happens,
I think you're
I'm
stuck
kind of
again.
editing the, okay, now it's okay.
Now it's okay. Yeah.
Okay. So yeah, I'm trying to go to those old archives and trying to see and edit images, and also doing some some kind of works for my clients. And also I'm creating trying to create more works for my portfolio, because when this will all over, people will be start very rapidly, everything will start very rapidly. So I'm just preparing for that period. And yeah, that's basically it. I would say I'm still working and trying to see what I can do in this situation.
So if you had to suggest for a very new beginner in cinemagraphs, what would you suggest to begin with? How do you tell them, what are the requirements to do a cinematograph?
Well, first of all, in cinematograph, you'll technically you'll always need a tripod. And I would say when you're starting off, gear doesn't really matter. It's up to you how you use your gears. So yeah, in that sense, if you have a tripod and any camera, you can shoot it, that's fine. And for ideas, I will say that yes, sometimes it's a bit challenging because to find all those something that is moving in a repetition and finding those loops and finding those movements, it's a bit hard sometimes. But I would say just train your eyes and keep looking for it, and also practice a lot. You have to practice a lot. Like start simple with something very simple things, like maybe tea in a cup. It's like tea swirling in a cup, or like anything that you find that you can work with. Very simple things. And when you start simple, you'll get the idea. Start creating it in Photoshop or the app you use, and then you get this idea and take it one step further and try to do different things. But at first I will say that just try simple things, simple movements that doesn't need too much masking or too much work, so that it gives you that confidence and gives you that idea. Because cinematography is all about practice. The more you practice, there's actually, I can say that, okay, do this, do that. There's the one thing you have to do is practice. Because without practice, you won't understand the concept of cinematography or how it works. And the more you practice, you will know how to add elements and how to take it to the next level or something. So yeah, my personal advice would be just have a tripod and a camera and just shoot and see from different footages, different videos, that what works and what not, and just keep practicing. And from that, like if you feel that, okay, I need to take it one step further, then do it.
Taking a break from cinematography, we go back to your photography. So you mentioned about your 365-day project, right? So tell us more about this project, because I think it's one of the best way to learn photography and also to challenge yourself. So how was it, and explain a little bit more about it?
Well, I started that in 2013, and there was an online community for like people who do this 365 project. And the thing is that this project is about, you have to take a photo. It doesn't matter what you take. It doesn't need to be perfect or something. You just take a photo every day, you edit it, and you share it with your, that community or whatever, like in Flickr or which you find best for you. So by doing that for like a year, every single day, like that kind of push you get, like, okay, I have to take a photo every single day. I have to, edit everything. So this kind of makes you learn things and pushes you to, work on your craft and learn from it. So yeah, that was really like helpful for me. I got to learn about camera settings and lighting and props and all of that every single day. And also, since I was editing every day, I learned new tools about Photoshop. And I remember I was watching lots of tutorials and YouTube videos. So that also helped a lot. So yeah, it's very, I would say, at some point it's very tiring, because each day you have to, like, it may sound very easy, but sometimes it happens that you don't find anything to shoot. So that struggle also, like that creative block also gives you that experience. So yeah, in general, it was a wonderful experience, and it kind of really made me learn photography. Like I wouldn't find my style so easily or so quickly, or I wouldn't learn something like about photography so easily without trying to do this. So I would say it's a great project, and if anyone wants to try it, they should go for it.
And regardless, it can start from any time of the day, right? It doesn't need to be January 1st to start.
You don't have to start from like January 1st. You can start even from today, from this hour, and just do this. Like you just need to do it for 365 days. So yeah, it doesn't really matter which day or which time you start. You just start it.
And you upload it to its own dedicated website, right? There's a website that actually creates a 365 days photos you can do.
Yes, it's called 365photography.org, and they are very dedicated to it, and you will find, like, you'll keep track of your project, and you can also see others' project and see and comment on them and get inspirations. And they also have like kind of top 20 things, like they gather the best photographs submitted in the past week, and just to give people a bit more push and inspiration. So yeah, it's a great website, and if anyone wants to try it, it's really great.
And we have Robic putting in all the links on our chat window, so it should be helpful. We are now taking
from that website.
Right. So we have questions coming in. I will just read out one from our Facebook from Kesav Clicks. So he's asking, your shots usually look like taken from 85mm lens. Most of the street photographers prefer wide lens. Any reason for this preference of focal length?
Okay. First reason is that when I started doing street, I was already shooting with 50mm and 85mm. So I just didn't want to, invest in another lens just for, trying something new or that. So I just wanted to see what I can do in my personal style in the street. Another thing is that, like we are used to a 35mm or a wide angle lens when we're seeing street photography. So when you're changing that lens to a 85, or right now I'm using a 105mm. So when you're using that kind of a different lens that is not usually used for street photography, you're kind of taking that perspective, you're kind of like giving it something new, fresh new look to it. So that was one point. And another one is that I personally, when I'm on the street, I don't really like that, like for my work, I don't try to concentrate on the scene, the whole scene. I don't really look for the details of the street. For me, the location, more than the location, is the person I'm working with. It's the person I'm shooting is more important. So I want my viewers' attention totally going to the subject I'm shooting. This is why I try to shoot mostly one person, and using that 85mm or 105mm really separates the subject from the background and gives your attention to them. And yeah, for me, my subjects are the life of my image. So I try to concentrate only on them. So that's the most important reason for me to use a 85 or a longer focal length.
Well, I think just to add on to what you were saying, because you focus more on people, how do you get that approval for photographs? Because do you get, have you faced any rejection from people saying don't take photos, or, any such?
If you have seen my work, I don't really take anything like too personal. Like I don't really take personal portraits or something too close. I just let them being themselves, So this is why I really never really felt or had any kind of, rejections or something. And also I have shot in Nepal, in India, and in Bangladesh, and most people are very friendly, and they don't really care for cameras or things. And especially here in Dhaka, people love to get their photographs taken. So I never felt that sort of problems or things. And also, since I'm using a longer focal length, what I do is the distance I keep between me and my subject is actually like not too close. So they don't really feel that, okay, like someone is in my personal space. And that's another reason why I use a longer focal length, because I do not enter their personal space. So yeah, it's never really happened. People never really, I don't really make people feel that, okay, I'm like taking their photos or I'm invading their personal space or something. So it really never happened with me.
Okay. Just to again add up to this whole taking people photographs in different places, how is it different or same taking photos in Kathmandu or in Nepal, India, and Bangladesh? What are the similarities, dissimilarities you've faced upon?
The similarities is that the culture are very similar, like the kind of people you see, the kind of clothes they wear, the kind of light, the similar kind of light. So, and also the narrow streets. I would say these elements are pretty similar between Nepal, India, and Bangladesh. And the differences is that one difference I felt in Nepal is that since there are lots of tourists and a lot of photographers there, so people don't really get bothered by cameras. So like they don't really care. Like if anyone is taking a photo or something, they just don't. It feels like they are not noticing at all. I would say the similar thing about India also, except few cities. The more touristic cities, they are very used to cameras and things. But what happens here in Dhaka, since we don't get lots of tourists or photographers, and most photographers here, whenever they see a photographer, it's mostly from press or from newspapers or TV medias. So they are not very used to cameras. So whenever I'm on the street, I get a lot of curious eyes and get a lot of attention, and like people try to look at cameras and every time. So that's one of the key difference between within Dhaka, between India and Nepal. So, and except that, I would say that everything is kind of same. That I didn't really find something that is too drastic. So yeah, but yeah, I had recently I was in Bangkok. So there I felt a little bit of difference from these South Asian countries. So
were there any language barrier for you between the 3 countries and again the 4 countries, I would say?
No, I would say no, because like when I was in Nepal, many people actually speak, I can also understand and speak a little bit of Hindi. So it wasn't hard for me to understand or something, because in Nepal, many people actually spoke Hindi to me. And also in India, it was very easy because everyone speaks Hindi. And also I was in Kolkata, and Kolkata is Bengali is my own language. So I didn't really feel that difference. And yeah, but I had a bit trouble in Bangkok, in Thailand, because I was in Chiang Mai, and there some local people didn't know how to speak speak good English or something. So it was hard for me to understand, but that's different story. But in general, I didn't really feel any big difference through language or something, through culture.
So now we go back to Cinemagraph kind of thing, because we have one question from Anil Nopani. So growing up, what were your inspiration? I can sense Harry Potter and such fantasy themed film books, etc. I'd love to get inside your brain and see how you come up with these ideas.
Yeah, I was always fan of fairy tales and magical things, even when I was a little boy. And I used to watch those magical movies, children movies, and fairy tale was a very favorite of mine. I used to read those books and things. So, and when I watched Harry Potter for the first time, it really made me realize, okay, these are the things you can do. There's no limit to your imaginations, or you can just do whatever you want to do. So that's how it all started off. I started to look at things differently. I felt okay, what if this whole world we are seeing is just something magical might be happening every single moment. So that's how those levitating teapots and levitating books and stuff came into my idea. What if I just turn around and my teacup is moving by magic itself? Something is happening there. Since I'm just a human being, I don't have that power to see the magic, something like that. So these are the things came into my mind, and I thought, okay, let's see what I can create with this imagination and this thing. So that's how it all took off, and that's how I usually work. Whenever I'm for example, I'm just sitting there and I'm looking at a book or looking at an object, and I'm trying to say, okay, that if I was a wizard, what would I do with it? What could I do with it? How can I make some magic with it? So that sort of things comes to my mind when I'm creating a cinematograph. I try to imagine myself as a wizard. I'm just doing the things those wizards do in Harry Potter, but my tool is Photoshop. My tool is my camera and things. So that's the thought process, basically.
Right. Okay, we have another question from Lavesh Shrestha. Looking back to your journey, how did you connect with different people on Instagram and Facebook? Did you approach them or vice versa? I see you collaborating with lots of different people from different countries.
Okay, so well, I would say that I would give the credit to Instagram and the Instagram hashtags and tags. Like whenever I used my, like uploaded my images there, I used some hashtags and things. So most of my, these collaborations, this meeting new people and everything actually came from those hashtags. Like, for example, when I'm shooting in Nepal, I will use, I use some of the hashtags related to it, and some of the, pages, Nepali pages, they featured, and the same thing happened in India. Like, I got those, I would say, supporters and like,
Are you stuck again? All right, you're back.
okay. So yeah, like they found me through those pages, found me through those hashtags, and they featured it. And from that, like, someone from India saw those photos and they contacted me. Okay, like, like all those things. And from that, I kind of got these contacts and things. Same thing with like when I was shooting still life, I got featured by, and I used some of the hashtags used by those, like people who actually create in that line, that sort of photos or works. So they kind of found me through that, and we kind of met in online, had conversations, and that's how I grew my family, I would say.
Mhm. So talking about Instagram, you have two Instagram accounts. Can you tell us why you have two Instagram accounts and how do you, and then both of them have massive following, right?
Well, I just feel like when I started like doing still life, I already, like my first Instagram account, which one, the one with the still life one, this was the first one and the main one, because, as I told you that the first 2 years of my career, I was doing still life photos. So, and when I started doing street, I felt like it was just like a hobby, and it's still initially still like not as, I would say, not as mainstream as my still life works. So I thought that just I didn't want to mix it up, and I didn't want to mix up those, because for me those are more amateurish work, the first few works. So I just didn't want to mix them up with my actual work that I get hired for or I am known for. So I started a separate account just for myself, just to see that, just that was more like a personal account. But when I got back from India, and especially from Varanasi, I started posting those photos, and that kind of started going a bit like people kind of started to see them, and that account started to grow. And I actually never had any plan to make this account like what it is like now. This, I just thought I will be posting my personal stuffs and things. So when I saw that, okay, like this account also like getting people and gaining followers, I stopped putting those personal things and things, and I started to post more qualityful and actual street works. So yeah, from that, like it just happened. I just had at the end, I just saw that, okay, let's keep them and keep them separated. Like I just didn't want to, the most important thing is that I just didn't want to mix them up. I wanted to create that separate brands for each style.
And I've been just notified that you have a third Instagram account for your iPhone only shots.
That's right. Like a small one.
That's small one. So we have another question based on Instagram is, how do you curate your Instagram feed? Do you plan it out or post what comes up? How do you post on Instagram?
No, I don't really plan it out, because I just feel like it's just too much work, and I don't really plan out. But I do, try to, I would say, post something that I personally like and I'm personally proud of. And like rather than putting something random and like just for the sake of posting, I don't do that. for me, it's all about quality. And I personally feel that if you have a style, a very distinct style, it will show up. It doesn't matter how you plan your account or something. Those colors, those characteristics will eventually show up. So I don't really plan out much. I just go through my photos and edit them. And if I feel like, okay, this is one good one, I personally like it, and then I try to, I post it. And for my still life works, it even takes more time, because just to create and plan out next image. So yeah, if you see that I usually post very few in my main account right now, because I take a lot of time to create each photos and cinemagraphs, and I am a bit more frequent in the street one. I try to post at least twice a week. I used to post once, but now it's just to push myself, because I feel like I was getting a bit lazy. So it just push you to edit a bit more photos and going through your archives, and most importantly to shoot more. So yeah, that's why I just right now I'm posting like 2 or 3 times, and that's all.
So we are still taking more questions if there are any people who would like to ask Ashraful anything. And again, talking about your Instagram, do you feel pressured in a way, because you have a lot of following, there are a lot of people looking for your work? Do you feel pressured that you have to create something extraordinary, or something? How do you feel it?
I don't really feel pressure for people, because I would say I pressure for myself. Like, if I don't create something quality, something that is that has quality, that has that standard, I personally wouldn't post it at all. And there was times that I didn't really post for like a month, or like more than a month, because I just felt like the work I was producing wasn't up to that mark. So yeah, for me, mostly it's about myself. Like, I need to be personally satisfied with my work. I need to be happy. And that's the one reason for me that I care most about. Like, as an artist, I feel like that you need to have that satisfaction and that pride in yourself, that okay, the work I'm posting here is actually making me happy. So I look for those works that actually personally makes me happy first, then I post them. So for me, yeah, I don't really get pressurized from I have to post a lot, I have to post qualityful work for my followers to get more followers and stuff. No, it mostly comes from myself, that I want to grow up more, I want to improve more, and yeah, that's the only thing I care for, to be honest.
We have a question. How do you gain followers in Instagram organically? Is there any advice?
Well, I wish I knew the answer, because Instagram, to be honest, is very confusing to me. I just don't know how it works, or I don't think anybody actually knows how it works. I would say just, concentrate on creating more qualityful work, concentrate on creating your, your portfolio, keep attention to your work first, rather than looking for followers, because I don't really think.
Yes, stuck again. We're just waiting for Ashraful to be back online. And then you're back, Ashraful?
Can you see me?
Yes, now we can see you. Yeah, you were lost for a while.
Okay.
So we'll just ask if there are any questions, please let us know. And yes, you were saying.
Yeah, so I would say that work on your photos and concentrate on what you're creating and create good work. And the people who actually likes your works and who supports you for that, they will always find you. And technically saying, I will say that use the hashtags that those are related to your work, so that people from similar interest can find you. And yeah, I would say that's the only thing I personally feel like if you want to grow, and if you want to grow a true real follower down. So yeah, just work on your work, create qualityful work, and use good hashtags related to your kind of work.
So there's another one. Following a certain style can sometimes become monotonous. So how do you come up with new ideas to keep the style looking fresh, or even to motivate yourself?
Well, I would say that, just because you have a style doesn't mean that, you have to always just create the similar kind of work. Style is something very personal, and style is more like, your own persona, I would say. Because once you have that style, no matter whatever you do, if you do a landscape, if you do a still life, if you do a street, that aura, that personal, characteristic will show up. So yeah, I will say that if I feel like, I actually never really felt like this, that okay, I'm creating the repetitive work or something. I just look for new ideas I can, come up with, and look for the, I would say my style remains same, but I look for new subjects or new kind of ways to use the similar thing, or what I can create something new. For example, like I have used teacups a lot or flowers a lot, but if each time I say, okay, like let's see what I can create with the same kind of elements, if I can create something different. So that kind of gives me the motivation and that inspiration and that kind of, fresh perspective to something. So yeah, that.
Right. So we have a question from our Facebook. What obstacles have you faced throughout your 9 years of photography journey? Is there any you'd like to share?
First obstacle I faced was actually when I started taking photography as a more of a profession. So it was a bit hard. I didn't have that support from my family much, because in Bangladesh, it's not really a mainstream career choice. So at first, those are the kind of problems I faced. Like I didn't have much support from family or my usual friends. So I just needed to listen to myself, what I wanted to do. And also another problem was, as a business owner, as a career, like I really didn't have clients like for my kind of works. So that was one problem I faced. I started learning about more international clients and how to work with them and how to outsource your work, something like that. So those are the kind of, it's basically, creativity is all about problem solving. You just learn in your way. And and another thing I would say that for my still life works, I wouldn't say it's a super big problem, but to get the props and the kind of subjects I work for, sometimes it's hard to get. For example, those Harry Potter objects from my Harry Potter inspired cinemagraphs. Those like something very simple, something very simple objects like those kill pen or some vintage items. These are not available here in Dhaka. So I have to kind of get them through shipping and buy them online. It's actually very expensive for me sometimes. But yeah, at the end, you learn from those problems and you just push through that, and you just have to push through that and make your way. You just need to do it.
Right. So let's talk something about your gears. I think people would love to know what kind of equipment you're using and also your association with Nikon.
Yeah. So I'm right now I'm using the Nikon D850 and with a 105 millimeter f1.4, and another lens I use is Nikon 85 millimeter f1.8, and sometimes the 50 millimeter f1.8, and these are the three lenses mostly I use for my work. I'm not really a very, like gear centric. Like I try to have as less as possible because it's just a bit like gears are a bit confusing for me. I don't really like to, you know, learn too much about them or work with them too much. So I just need a camera that can do my work and a lens that can, create work, speak to my style, and that's all. And I just, for my cinematograph, I use a tripod, as I said, and yeah, that's it. And for my, sometimes I use some mobile lenses, like lenses from Moment for my mobile shots, and I use one wide angle and one from one telelens from the 58mm telelens from Moment for my cell phone, and these are the all gears I have.
So how, like normally people, because of the digital camera, people are taking photos and just keeping it in the hard drive, right? For you, how important is printing them, or how do you ever print your photos, or what do you do with
Yes,
your digital photos?
I do print my images, and like most of the works I do as a photographer commercially, 90% of my works go to print as a book cover, as magazines and stuff. So yeah, I do print, like at least I try to print 2 or 3 times a month, or just to see that how the colors and how the images look in print, because it's, for me it's very important, because sometimes it happens that you see an image very beautiful on the screen, but when you print it, it just like day and night difference, like it loses a lot of quality, and there are like lack of sharpness, colors, etc. So just to make sure that, okay, this doesn't happen when my clients print my images, or when I'm selling an image, when I'm printing an image and sell them. So the clients don't see those kind of loss of quality. So just to make sure, and most importantly, when you start doing prints, you learn more about your post-processing techniques, where is the flaw and which things you need to rectify. So yeah, for me, it's very important, I would say.
So for the next question, you partly answered already, but how do you make money from your work?
I would say that 90% of time it's the book covers and also stock images. And sometimes I do some brand collaboration, for example, that I was fortunate to do with Nikon. And yeah, something like that. And it's a bit mix of a lot of things. For example, like magazine articles, or doing some, maybe a tutorial from a magazine or something. But mostly I do from book cover. I work with some agencies, some stock agencies. What I do is I create new works, create new images which are suitable for book covers. I submit to them, and they kind of distribute it to their clients, and if they like it, they'll get it, and just from that it happens. So mostly from stock images.
Right. So are there any stock websites that you would recommend people to, because this is the right time to go through your old photos and maybe apply for stock websites?
I personally, like, there are stock agencies, I would say that you need to study a lot before submitting to any stock agency, because every agency has its, bits and cons, and pros and cons, and I personally don't feel that I don't submit my works to micro stocks like deposit files, or deposit images, iStock photo.
Mm-hmm. You're stuck again, but people, you can send us your questions if you have any, because we'll be wrapping up soon. Yep, you're back. Good.
Okay, so I don't recommend Shutterstock or micro stocks like deposit photos or 123 RF, something like that, because what happens, to get some good amount of money, you have to upload like a huge amount of work. For example, like 2,000 or 3,000, even more works, just to get something decent from them, because they sell images for a very small amount of money. So I don't really see any point of doing that. Sometimes if you are lucky, you can, sell your images there. But personally, I don't really recommend those sites. I do submit my photos on Getty. Getty is, I would say it's a very, standard one. It's not, I wouldn't say it's just so big and you can get a lot of money from it. But yeah, just to start, I would say you can submit to Getty because they have the most distributors from the whole world right now. So Getty is one good one to start with, but still they don't pay a lot of money to it. So unless you have like a big portfolio, you don't earn that much. And another thing I can say that if you really want to, earn good money or something really that is, you can say that, okay, it's good. I would say that first know your style, and there are like stock agencies dedicated to different style of photography. For example, I work with 2 book cover agents. They only take images for book covers. They only work with artists who create for book covers, and they have a very certain theme. And just to get, just to submit your photo is a big hassle there, because they kind of choose every photographer.
We're having some difficulties again.
Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Okay. So yeah, there are some dedicated stock agencies. If you can get into one of them, that will be really good. But for that, you need to have that experience and that sort of, like you need to know that, okay, which agency needs your work or which agency you can go with. So there are some few agencies like Blend Images, another one, I can remember, Glasshouse Images. They are very like boutique kind of stock agencies, and they select images very selectively, and they have like very few handful of photographers. So you can get to one of those stock agencies, then you can expect something like something good, a good amount of money. But also it's super hard to get into that kind of agencies.
Right. Let me just take you back to your student days. There's one question. Since you are a fine arts student, did your study kind of influence your kind of work right now?
Yes, definitely. When I'm taking a photo, I don't really think it as a photographer. I try to think it as a painter, how a painter would approach. That's how I approach to my images. The kind of light I'm going to use, the kind of colors I'm going to use. Like I'm very inspired by classic paintings, the Renaissance painting, and also the paintings of 16th century Dutch genre painting. Like my street photography has a big influence of those paintings. So I mostly study from those, golden hour paintings and those lights, those colors. And when I'm post-processing, I try to make sure that my images look more like a painting rather than an actual photograph. And also one of the reason why I shoot always vertical is also that reason, because it's kind of, I try to take that, traditional 16.9 frame from something a bit different, something more painterly. So yeah, they have like, still when I'm shooting, when I'm working, I still think as an artist, I think as a painter.
Mm-hmm. So we have another question on Facebook. Do you do any black and white photography? If so, where, when, and why?
No, I don't really do any black and white at all. And I have, I never did. And I don't think I will ever do. Personal reason is that, I actually love black and white photos. Like one of my big inspiration is street photography, Fan Ho. So his works are mostly in black and white. So I do love black and white photography, but for my personal work, I like to see them in colors. And I like that, the colors in light, the subjects, and making them pop. And as I told you, that my inspiration has always been paintings. So, I like to work with colors. And whenever I'm editing an image or post-processing. I like to think that, okay, I'm just painting the image. So that kind of fun I feel from those color photographs. So I always work with colors. The colors are my absolute favorite thing to work with.
Right. So slowly now, because you also have a YouTube channel where you do a lot of behind the scene, like tutorials kind of thing. How do you started that? When you thought that you need to now start sharing your behind the scene?
Well, when I started doing still life photography, I got like few people asked that, okay, like how are you doing things and stuff. So first few videos are very like from very long time ago, like the behind the scenes footages of my still lives. And recently I started creating the editing videos because I get a lot of questions of how I do it or how to get the certain color tones or things. So that kind of gave me that inspiration that, okay, like because sometimes it's hard to explain what I'm doing just in a chat or in a conversation. So just to show people and just to document the thing, right now I'm doing some editing videos and posting on my YouTube, and yeah, that was basically it. I wanted to share my workflow, and whoever needed to know how I do things for them.
And now let's talk about few websites that you've been involved in terms of contributing, and like you've participated in 365 Days website. Are there any other website that you would recommend for people to learn photography, or at least during this time of lockdown to try out?
Well, YouTube is a wonderful source of inspiration and tutorials and lots of different classes there. And also I would recommend, if you really want to learn from industry professionals, Creative Live is a wonderful platform. They have these, they broadcast free classes every single day. There are tons of classes about every aspect of photography, business making, inspiration, life, like you can find everything. And honestly speaking, I have learned more from those classes. I used to stay awake all night and watch those classes every time. And they share like so many good details and different things. So yeah, I would say that try Creative Live or something that's streaming website, something like that, which you can learn from. So yeah, two of the things I would say, that YouTube and Creative Live. The classes there are like absolutely amazing. You can learn from all right now the most famous and actual professionals who are working with bigger clients and things. So I would recommend those two.
So now we'll take more like 10 more minutes of your time. In the meantime, if you have any other questions for people, do write to us. So other thing I wanted to ask was, do you ever feel like doing a photo story, or photo documentary through your style of photography?
Like, do I need to do, or like?
Do you plan to do, or do you want to do, or?
Well, I did few with my street photography. For example, the one I did in the shipyard, Dhaka shipyard. I did a series of stories and series of photos and cinemagraphs there. So that was one. And also I did, for my still life photography, I did one cinematograph series about Harry Potter inspired cinemagraphs. So yeah, I do have some plans. And also I have a big project coming up, and I'm planning and kind of preparing and collecting props and all that for it. I want to create a cinematograph series inspired by those 16th century Dutch still life paintings. I want to create that keep that characteristic and use this similar kind of techniques they used in those paintings. Like, I want to make cinemagraphs as if they are from those era, but I want to add the motions and the cinematograph elements to them. So for that, since those paintings were very well decorated and there are tons of subjects and very well detailed, so I'm just kind of now planning out, sketching out, and trying to see which props I will use, collecting props, creating props. So it's in the process. It will take, I think, I'll take about 1 year to prepare for it, and maybe hopefully next year I will be able to shoot all the series. So let's see what happens.
Right. And have you done any commercial cinemagraphs for any client or anything that got you money?
Yeah, I actually didn't do anything commissioned, but I submit my cinemagraphs to, there is one German stock agency, and they sell cinemagraphs. So I submit through them, and it's called Galler Play, and they kind of distribute cinemagraphs to different clients in Germany and all over the world. So through them, I got like some of my cinemagraphs. Some clients bought it, and recently one was used by Sigma for their new, new camera. They have this cinematograph feature built in their camera. For that, they kind of got one cinematograph on that side. So yeah, like I sold the licenses, but still I haven't yet got commissioned yet. So
Right.
yeah.
All right. So like we are nearing the end. Is there anything that you'd like to say for people out there who's listening or who is watching you during this time of lockdown inside the house to be creative? What would be your final suggestions?
Well, I would say just stay calm and stay positive. And if you feel like, just don't feel pressured that, you know, you have to create something, you have to do this or that. I know that at this time it's very overwhelming, but just take your break if you need. Just calm yourself down, and if you feel like creating, just create it. And since you're in home, don't feel like that you're limited to it. I personally believe that creativity blooms when you are in a limitation, because that gives you the idea. And as I told, that creativity is all about problem solving. So just look around, and you don't really need to go further to find inspiration. Just trust your mind, trust your head, trust your heart, and try to see your surroundings with a different perspective, with something new, fresh look, and try to see what you can create with. And just don't feel like, you don't have to be perfect. Your works don't need to be perfect. Done is better than nothing. So just do whatever you feel like, create whatever you feel like. You don't have to create something super amazing or something very perfect. Just create it, keep yourself busy, and just keep that spirit up. Eventually this shall pass too, and we are all in this together, and everything will be, everything will get okay at the end. So just keep inspired, be inspired, and just stay positive. That's what I would say.
Right. So just before we end this meeting, we have one final question. Any other photographers you would recommend to follow, Nepalese or foreigner or Bangladeshi, that you would recommend?
Well, there are so many photographers doing wonderful work. It's hard to just recommend one photographer. I would say that just, if you're on Instagram, look for the hashtags and use the hashtags to find those works. I would say look for the works rather than finding a photographer, because nowadays there are so many people doing so many wonderful things, and it's so easy to get inspired by all those works. So I would say just look for the works, because works need to be appreciated. So I would say that you use the hashtags and see which works catch your eyes, catch your attention, and if you feel inspired. And there are tons of photographers. It's hard for me to just name one, honestly. And I don't really, I can say that this photographer is particularly my favorite. But as an inspiration for my street works or something, I do follow like works of Fan Ho and Steve McCurry, names like that. But in general, I like what I personally do. I look for the hashtags and see the new works. And there are, every time whenever I go through those hashtags, I find something very interesting, something very new, fresh works. So yeah, my personal take on this will be this. Look for the works rather than just one artist, or because everybody has something unique to offer.
Definitely. So thank you so much for giving us your time. I'm sure it's some 5:45. What time is it there?
It's 4:45.
4. All right. So yeah, thank you so much for giving us your time, your valuable insight on your work, and also shedding some light on cinematography and things people can do while they're at home. So thank you so much.
No, thank you so much for having me. It's my pleasure, totally. It's always nice to share your workflow, whatever your experiences. So yeah, thank you to all who have joined, and especially to people from Nepal. Thank you so much. I'll very soon, hopefully, when everything is over, I'll get to go there again, and maybe we can shoot together. So
I'm sure when you come back, just write that you're in Nepal. I'm sure a lot of people would be tagging along with you. For people who is listening, who are watching, we'll be back again in 2 days' time. We have a list full of people as interesting as Ashraful. So stay tuned to our Facebook and Instagram. We'll be back with live conversation again. So thank you so much, Ashraful, for being with us. And abar dekha hobe.
Abar dekha hobe. Thank you.
All right.